I'm going to do a quick introduction to our editorial technology session. We have two panelists with us today. Michael Clark is the president of Clark & Company, a management consulting firm working at the intersection of technology, business, and content. He's also a partner at STM Advisors, focusing on mergers and acquisitions in the STM marketplace. We also have Wendy Queen, the director of Project Muse at Johns Hopkins University Press. She serves on the International Board of Counter, ALPSP Steering Committee, and the Crossref ebook interest group. So today, we're going to take a closer look at changing editorial technology and how publishers can embrace this technology to achieve their content strategies. For example, peer review technology is changing to accommodate the ever-growing complexity of the scholarly publishing ecosystem and ever-growing variations on the peer review process. So panelist Michael Clark will provide a whirlwind tour of what's new and notable in this very important area. Also, Project Muse is working on a Mellon-funded initiative called Muse Open. Muse Open is aiming to pursue the distribution of OA monographs, and panelist Wendy Queen will take us through the possible workflow from open source editorial tool to Muse Open, and the possible ways also that these technologies can work together. So with no further ado, over to you.
Thank you. As Betsy said, we're going to start off with a survey of peer review technology. The survey is meant to be representative and not comprehensive. So certainly, I'm sure I'm going to be missing a few initiatives, and would love to, as we get into the discussion later, hear about some things that I'm sure I missed. So I'm going to organize this in four buckets, talk about workflow technologies, then workflow integrations, authoring systems, and everything else. There were too many other little categories, so I just lumped them together. Start with peer review workflow. I'm sure everybody is familiar with products like Aries Systems, eJournal Press. There we are, sorry. There we go. ScholarOne manuscripts, eJournal Press, Bench Press from Highwire. Those are really the I'd say the four systems that have been most prominent in terms of peer review workflow over the last 2 decades, really. It's interesting, we're starting to see some examples of new in-house systems. So eVise is probably the most prominent of these such systems. This is from Elsevier, and there are certainly many organizations that have had in-house systems, and some for a long time. Organizations like AAAS has their own in-house system for science. The Optical Society has their own in-house system. The American Physical Society, and so on. I mention eVise, A, because it's new, and B, just because it has a potential to be a significant player in the market just because of the size of Elsevier's portfolio, both of proprietary journals and the society clients that they publish for. And you could imagine several thousand journals over time moving to eVise. If that happens, could be substantive. A new startup in this workflow space is Scholastica, which primarily focuses on business and law journals, although they clearly have ambitions to be broader than that. And they've taken very much of literally just go to the website and punch in some information and we'll get you started in 5 minutes kind of thing. As opposed to the far more sort of custom setup that you get with some of the other systems. They're clearly going for a niche of a particular niche in the marketplace. The Public Knowledge Project has for some time had open journal systems, which is kind of a soup to nuts platform for publishing journals in open source capacity. And part of their system is a submission and review workflow product. Now this is open source software, so it's very much kind of do it yourself. Whether there are some hosted solutions as well. ICSIS, which is now part of Copyright Clearance Center, is a bespoke software shop that builds custom software, although with a series of modules that are all built on the Alfresco content management system, and within their set suite of modules, they have functionality related to peer review workflow. And then just recently, we saw this announcement from eLife and the Collaborative Knowledge Foundation partnering on a new open source platform for submission and review. Did I miss? Hang on, this thing keeps skipping. Skip up. Yeah, here we go. I mentioned PLOS also has an open source system called Aperta, which is in beta with several PLOS journals. I know it was with PLOS Biology last year, and I think they've started to percolate that out throughout the PLOS portfolio. And they have said that this will at some point become an open source solution that other publishers are welcome to use. And then, sorry, this is, you have to, here we go. And then Science AI is another startup that is developing technology related to both publishing platforms and peer review. They're still very nascent. I know there are a number of publishers that are doing some experiments with them. I'm not sure that there's anything public as of yet. Sorry. So I thought I would do my best imitation of the Gartner Group. So Gartner, for those of you who are not aware, they're a technology analyst, big technology analyst and research firm. And they do a thing which they call their magic quadrants, where they basically look at a sector of the market or a particular type of technology. They do this for content management systems and CRMs and that kind of thing. And will sort of place all the players within the marketplace on this grid of leaders and challengers and niche players and visionaries. This is a subjective art, by the way. This is not rigorous, but they don't do one because it's too small a market for peer review workflow tools. So I thought I would again do my best Gartner imitation, if I can get to it here. Here we go. So Aries and Clarivate, formerly Scholar1. Manuscripts are, from a market share perspective, far and away the leaders in the space. Between the two of them, they must have 60%, 70% of the market, maybe more. eJournal Press is another one that's been around for quite a while and is I'd put into the leader category. The challengers, ICSIS and Scholastica, and River Valley, which somehow got skipped over with the slide thing here, is another player that has a new manuscript submission system that is out and in use by IET. And I just saw an announcement this week from BMJ that's going to be using it in one of their journals. So River Valley is another player here. Where do they go? There they are. And their system is called Review. Sorry. And then in the niche players, we have eVise, which, despite the potential to have a very big market share, is really an Elsevier universe. Open journal systems I have down here because they're fairly niche in that you have to have the sort of technical resources to be able to make use of their software, and it tends to also be more heavily used for single journals as opposed to journal portfolios. Highwire I have down here, even though Benchpress has been around for a long time because it's really kind of a Highwire universe product. And then Visionaries, I have PLOS and eLife and Science AI because they're really trying to do something a little bit different. They all three of these organizations have a vision of a peer review workflow product that is not pushing papers, pushing PDFs around, but is really trying to have everybody really work in one instance of an XML document, and sort of coming to annotate and otherwise comment on a single source. All right, I'm going to move on to workflow integrations. Authenticate is a tool that plugs into peer review systems to check for plagiarism. Stat Reviewer is likewise something that plugs in to check for to help out with statistical reviews in an automated fashion. Sorry here. We've got Funder Registry from Crossref, which plugs in to peer review to capture funder information. Reviewer Locator does just what you'd think it might do from Clarivate. You don't have to be using Manuscript Central. It's a service that can plug into other systems. Or ScholarOne manuscripts, I mean. Anera Xstyles does on-the-fly reference processing for peer review. Oop, I might have skipped one. Nope. RightsLink for open access payments from Copyright Clearance Center. Orchid ID, of course, for author disambiguation. Ringgold for institutional disambiguation, affiliation disambiguation. We just heard all about Chronos. Hypothesis is starting to be used by some systems for commenting and annotation by reviewers. Meta, we heard about earlier this morning, is doing some work in predictive analytics. And that might have been it. Oh, sorry, there are slides hiding in here because this clicker. Kasari is a system for assigning a taxonomy to author roles. So it's a sort of a taxonomy that can plug into a review system. Sorry, I'm just going to flip through these one more time just to make sure I don't miss anybody. Okay, I think I got them. All right, moving to authoring systems. We've got Overleaf from Digital Science, which focuses on a LaTeX workflow. Authoria, which is similar but doesn't focus on a LaTeX workflow. Editoria, which Wendy is going to tell us all about. Manuscripts.app. Oh, maybe it's just manuscripts now. It used to be manuscripts.app. So they are. This is a desktop app as opposed to an online workflow. As the others are. And this is from the creators of Papers, or several of the creators of Papers, which is now part of Digital Science as well. But they've started a new sort of desktop app for authoring. And last on my list is Atlas from O'Reilly, which is this and Editorial are focused on book workflow, and the others are mainly focused on journal workflow. Sorry. Okay. Other notables. This is the other category. PubPeer is, wait, hang on. Is there, maybe I can just use this. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just missing too many of these things. All right, so Publons is a way in which reviewers can get credit for the reviews. It's a site in which you can, it now integrates with a number of publishers and is able to pull in information in keeping with publisher policy about who has reviewed. In some cases it will be open, who's reviewed what. In some cases it's more just this person was a reviewer for our journal, and it won't say which paper, but it allows them to put this on their, the reviewer to put it on their CV and get some credit for it. PubPeer is a post-publication commenting system. So you can go and comment on papers. And Academic Karma is exactly the same thing, but for preprints. Manuscript Exchange, Common Approach, MECA, is not necessarily a technology, it's more of a standard for transferring papers and reviews between journals. That just got started, but seems to be getting quite a bit of traction. And a similar thing that's not a technology but a standard is the top guidelines from Center for Open Science, which has been adopted by a number of organizations, most recently Elsevier, and is a standardized way for displaying metadata about research integrity and review at the article level. So, for example, it might say the data from this associated with this research was made available to the peer reviewers, and you can find it at such and such repository and so forth. bioRxiv is in here because they have been working to streamline submission of the preprints from bioRxiv to journals. So you submit to bioRxiv, and then there's sort of a slipstream to go to journals from there. So it is kind of becoming a bit of a submission platform. Peerage of Science was, I put this in here because the Scholarly Kitchen recently pronounced them dead. But I heard from Jan, their founder, that they're still alive, not dead yet. And this is a way in which it's kind of like a way to post your work and then invite reviewers and then invite journals to submit a proposal to publish your work. And they've gotten a little bit of adoption. They're based over in Finland. Faculty of 1,000 Research, we heard a little bit about this just before. The Welcome Open Research is an instance of this. So it's this concept of publishing and then inviting open peer review. And I think this is the last one, PRE, which is a AAAS initiative, which is about surfacing information about the peer review process at the article level. So, and they do a similar thing with the Welcome information, which is sort of, how many reviewers, were involved in this paper, how many editors were involved, and so forth. And I believe that's the last slide. Yes, but we can save Q&A for after Wendy's presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I can be very fast and make sure you get to lunch, but I'm not going to be graceful enough to handle the mic, the notes, the cranky clicker, the water, and all of those things. So if you all don't mind, I actually might use the table as a podium, so seated. Is that okay with everybody? Trust me, otherwise something crazy will happen. So. I mean, something crazy still might happen because I just jinxed myself, but. Ooh. Hello? Okay. And you're gonna, okay, no cranky clicker, so we're off to a good start. So good morning and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Wendy Queen, the director of Project Muse, which is part of the Johns Hopkins University Press. So for those of you who are not familiar with Muse, we are an aggregator of journals and books in the humanities and social sciences. We provide services for over 250 publishers, and currently our catalog includes over 450,000 articles and over 1 million chapters. We started over 20 years ago with a grant from the Mellon Foundation and the NEH, and the spirit of everything that we do at Muse is around partnerships and collaboration. So I'm excited to present my narrative today, as when I think of practical innovations in the publishing space, I become very excited when I see synergies align. As I said, Muse is an aggregator, and our operating principle is to create efficiencies to reduce costs in order to return as much money back to the publishers as possible. So we live in a very streamlined and practical space. While working on a Mellon-funded initiative, Muse Open, I have been following the progression of a project out of the University of California Press and the California Digital Library called Editoria. And today I hope to draw a clear picture of possibilities of our space moving forward with a possible end-to-end publishing workflow, starting with Editoria and moving through to Muse Open. This scenario is possible because of some key shared infrastructure using open source community supported tools. So we'll start with what is Editoria. Editoria is a web-based, open source, end-to-end authoring, editing, and workflow tool that presses and library publishers can leverage to create modern, format-flexible, standards-compliant, book-length work. And again, like I said, it is funded by the Mellon Foundation and is out of University of California Press and California Digital Library. So I'd like to say thanks to Eric Van Ryn from University of California Press for the use of some of his slides, but also his expertise and guidance on this part of the process and this subject. So what is Muse Open? Muse Open is a 2-year grant, started in 2016, so we're a little over halfway. And I should mention, this is the first grant Muse has received since that initial grant over 20 years ago. So it's sort of new territory for us and the first time I've been a PI on a grant. And our goal is to ensure that OA, open access monographs, are visible, discoverable, and potentially transformative in a highly diversified platform environment. So we'll start the narrative with outlining Editoria's capabilities, and then we'll move and discuss how it dovetails with Muse Open. So, and this is sort of a 30,000-foot overview of Editoria, but starting their process, they really looked at the import. So they were interested in how do authors already work. They weren't interested in let's create a new way and encourage authors to work in a different way. So Editoria will ingest files from Microsoft Word and automatically transform and encode style information. And the authoring tools are very much in a WYSIWYG, a what you see is what you get environment that enables authors and editors to collaborate more efficiently on copy editing, typesetting, and proofreading. Again, lowering the barrier for anybody being sort of intimidated by a tool. And the workflow is broken down into configurable steps that lets editors establish goals and deadlines with flexible assignment, communication, and permission functionality. I really believe they've thought of everything, just as a side note. And the typesetting is native XML, HTML framework, which means the typesetting happens on the fly, eliminating the need to track across multiple versions and formats. And Editoria is built on the PubSuite framework in partnership with the Collaborative Knowledge Foundation, COCO, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And this is an example of an output from Editoria to PDF to EPUB. And I should mention this isn't a fixed state, but can be displayed in any way one would want. So very much customizable. On the Muse Open side, we have several goals as part of this program. So really moving beyond the PDF. So right now, all of our books on the Muse platform are served in PDF. And we want to create a more robust reader experience, breaking the boundaries of PDF for more flexibility now and in the future. And I should say, this doesn't mean that we won't be producing PDFs. There's a lot of people that still very much love PDFs, but there's things we want to do outside of the format. So to start the process of determining the best reader experience, we hired a firm, Brilliant Experience, to interview scholars, and this included over 20 interviews and 3 rounds of design iterations to create a user experience catering to modern preferences. And at this point, the designs are finished and the templates are being built out for a July launch. We've created accessibility guidelines for content creators. This was a very big part of our grant. We didn't want to open up all of this content and not take the opportunity to also talk about how we can do accessibility better. So we created with a consultant a set of guidelines, and we first presented them last spring at our Muse publisher meeting, and then published them on our site. And the activity has resulted in many one-on-one conversations with publishers to help them better understand what they can do at the point of content creation. So that's sort of hard for a publisher because we're not involved in those pieces of the workflow. So that leaves a product like Editoria to come in and see where can they address accessibility through their workflow. And it's my understanding that this is very much something on their future roadmap. So a very nice synergy there. And Muse is doing all of this while supporting the development of new types of OA monographs. And just a sneak peek, this is an example of the new interface for a book chapter, and to highlight a few aspects of the design. Like always, less is more for scholars. If they had their way, there'd be absolutely no branding on the entire page. And the desire for references and footnotes to be parallel with the content, integrate them more, and more automated features, personalization services, including annotations, safe searches, safe histories, all those types of things. And this brings us to how we create the infrastructure. So our workflow development has focused on transforming scholarly content at scale. And to do this, we have embraced using community-supported open source software to transform EPUB to HTML. So since I'm an aggregator, we're always looking for what is the common denominator that we can use so that we can get the scale, so that we can keep the costs down and return as much money back to the publishers as possible. And up until this point, all components of Muse have been built in-house. And we made the decision to pivot and create reusable infrastructure and workflow components that have a lasting impact for the community. And analytics, I think they're going to come up in every conversation going forward around OA. But we are looking towards the goals of creating a sustainable hosting model for OA monographs, but also looking at opportunities to harmonize both gated and open content. I think the humanities and social sciences are moving a little slower in this space than other disciplines, so we really do always look for the opportunities about how do we make this work together. It will be a very long time if we were ever to become fully OA. It sort of reminds me of being in grad school and having debates about print being dead, and here I am, almost 20 years later. So we are taking an iterative approach to developing the analytics for Muse Open. Ultimately, the industry will need to define a standard to ensure all platforms delivering OA content use the same metrics to define impact and value. I believe Counter should extend its reportings to publishers and address OA as part of the standards for publisher statistics. But we all know standards take a long time and resources to develop. So the first iteration of OA analytics on Muse Open will address more basic statistics until those OA value metrics standards are defined. Basically, we need to be able to get apples to apples here to have some serious conversations. And for the launch of Muse Open, the goal is to layer new features onto the existing statistics tool that will enable publishers to understand OA usage and reach compared to usage and reach of the gated content. And we have worked with data from a small body of OA content currently on the platform from Cornell, and the results of presenting even a small data sample have shown or encouraged the publisher to pursue more OA content and sort of define for itself what that impact means for them. The other way? Sorry. Okay. So at launch, we will distribute over 300 monographs and that range in approach. So some are born digital works, some are the NEH Mellon Humanities Open eBook grant recipients. We're also pursuing unique OA opportunities. An initiative that I'm most excited about is called Black Press in America Project, and it's historical newspapers from the African American community from the last 200 years. And beyond its historical significance, it's an opportunity to look at publishing as a continuum between digital and print, open and gated. The corpus will be a combination of print books published at Hopkins Press, OA enhanced monographs exclusively hosted on the Muse platform, and a series of image galleries and other supplemental materials. I'm talking too quickly now, and it's mouthful marbles. Supplemental materials hosted at the Hopkins Library. Using linked data, the main opportunity is creating an environment that will allow the user to interact somewhat seamlessly between the Muse platform and the materials hosted at the library. It's a unique opportunity, and in my opinion, only possible because we have a collaboration at the beginning of the process between a publisher, a platform, libraries, and authors, and from the very get-go, we decided to use shared infrastructure. And the born digital content or new content like Black Press in America can feasibly start with Editoria and continue to the Muse platform. And at launch in July 2018, we will be supporting discovery services such as discovery and downstream activities such as MARC Records, linking feeds, KBART, Crossref, Portico, etc. I hope I'm not offending anybody by leaving them off the list. And this is all about ensuring OA content receives the same services as gated content. So to an end user, they will know it is OA content, but there should be nothing about the experience that is different between the open and the gated content as well. And this is where I put a bow on it, right on time for lunch. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about shared infrastructure. Both Muse and Editoria separately partnered with COCO, the Collaborative Knowledge Foundation, to develop key aspects of their workflows. We both used Ink, a job management tool that can perform a configurable set of actions on files handling ingestion, conversion, transformation, and enrichment. And so following the flow of the diagram, one could start with a Word document in Editoria, process through conversion to an EPUB output. The EPUB output is where Muse Open begins and translates in formats to be hosted on the Muse platform. And for Muse, Ink can take a single EPUB file and break it into parts because we serve at the chapter level, so that's a necessary step. And at this point, the content can then be discovered by users and supported by all the downstream activities. So it's beautiful, and when it all comes together, it actually puts in our world a lot of potential to create efficiencies. But our development won't end in July. There are so many more opportunities and synergies to address after the launch of Muse Open. So we'll definitely continue to build the full suite of analytics, not just the reporting aspect, but help defining the value metrics. We want to incorporate more components from Inc. We want even more efficiencies to keep the costs down for our publishers and to participate in a collaborative community open source environment. And making sure we are partnering strategically with other tools, partners, versus creating redundant systems. So like Editoria, identifying other partners to, other programs to partner with. And because I believe that a project and a staff as small as Muse, you're never going to get that budget for innovation, but actually efficiencies create the budget for innovation. And most importantly, sharing what we learned from this whole process with the community, because it really took me personally to be involved in a Mellon initiative, to have the opportunity to be at the table, to have a front row seat, to hear exactly where other people were going, to be able to strategically think about how can we improve the entire ecosystem. So, thank you. I guess time for a few questions. It's because I spoke too quickly, I know. Yeah, okay.
Any good moderator, I came up with a couple.
Oh.
Hello? Okay. Okay, this may be a little controversial, but it could be fun. But there's lots of debate around peer review being, this is to both of you actually, being inherently flawed. There has been definite recognition of gender bias in peer review. How can technology potentially address these issues? Any ideas? Or maybe they can't.
Certainly there are organizations, publishers that, and journals that do double-blind peer review. I mean, that's certainly one way to handle it, and there's technology supports that. I don't know if you have any other, I mean, it's probably easier with a journal article than a book, which is kind of all about who the author is.
Right. So I'm going to take the easy way out on this one, because as an aggregator and being in a post-publication space, that is something that we sort of get a pass on because we trust the publishers that we're participating with to handle. So I just don't have the expertise to answer that.
Yeah. I know there was a study that's come out last month, and I'll have to look it up. Maybe somebody here has the citation, but
Alice Meadows.
yes,
Referenced that in a recent.
Yeah, and it was mainly focused on geographic bias, and was giving people the option of submitting blinded or not to their name and affiliation. And I don't know that it looked at the gender issue, but I know there have been a number of studies that have. Did we miss anything? Were there any big peer review technologies or initiatives that people are aware of that we didn't touch on?
And I'll just add, since Editoria is not handling peer review, I look forward to seeing who they actually partner with for the first step in that process. So the peer review to Editoria to a platform like Muse.
Oh, that was the Mecca. Yeah. Mecca. Yeah.
And I know that it's moving forward rapidly. The intention was initially so that authors can submit to internet servers, really, will be able to very easily, as you were saying earlier, stream into other journals without the friction of submission so that an author can submit by archive and that paper can then be easily transported to a next press journal and create a journal.
Yeah. The Mecca initiative, and I think they're at. I think they've got a website now, which was in my slides somewhere. But John Sack is heading that up at Highwire. Great. Well, I think we've got a round table on peer review technology at launch. So people that want to keep talking about it, there's a table for it. And
Good.
thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.